You chatter like a monkey, and you kick like a lace curtain.
These childish insults are getting insulting.
Iron Fist!
Jesus.
Welcome back to the PCMR podcast, where we talk about movies, TV shows, comic books, and other such things that don't really matter, but we talk about them anyway because, hey,
That's
people
what we
seem
do.
interested. Yeah. I am your host, as
Not in
always.
us.
No,
Not in
not
us.
in us.
Those things.
Those things, yeah. I'm your host, as always, Aiden Mungai. I'm joined by my forever co-host, Brett Page.
Always the co-host, never the host.
Know your place, scum. Today we are talking about the final entry in Netflix's Marvel series before we arrive at Defenders.
Yes, their Avengers event, if you will.
Iron Fist.
Iron Fist.
Yeah, we've got Defenders coming up later in the year, which is looking to be pretty good. But before we get there, we gotta deal with the immortal weapon.
Deal with the immortal weapon.
Deal with, because as we think we've said in previous, I don't know, the last two or at least the last one, it's been getting mixed reviews.
Yeah.
The first 6 episodes came out and
Strongly negative, I'd
negative.
say.
12% on Rotten Tomatoes, 14% I think. That's low.
Yeah, that's pretty low.
That's pretty low.
Like Fant 4 sticks at 9%, so that's not much above that.
That's not much above that. So that's some strange context to go into a Marvel Netflix series.
Yeah, it's very strange.
Especially since like the last 3 or 4, I guess, because of 2 seasons of Daredevil, have been pretty good. You've gone in with some pretty high expectations.
Yeah, it's always been pretty solid show.
So this has been interesting to go into. Hello. Where was I?
Recording? Okay, recording.
Where was I? What was I talking about? Strange context.
Yeah,
It's a strange context to go into the show with. So let's dive into a little bit of the plot before we go into our thoughts. So Danny Rand, aka the Iron Fist, comes back to New York after 15 years being away.
In Kunlun.
Is Kunlun? How do they pronounce it in the show? It's Kunlun. I always thought that it was like Kunlun because in the comics there's like a hyphen between K and UN. So I thought it was like K, Un, Kunlun. But apparently it's just Kunlun.
Yeah. And apparently in this universe, it's one of the 7 cities of heaven, he called. He didn't call it the mystical city. He called it one of the 7 cities of heaven.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty much the same. You know, that's like changing infinity gems to infinity stones or whatever.
Yeah.
It's same thing, same difference. Doesn't matter. So he comes back 15 years. I think that's changed in the comics. It's 10 years, but they changed it here to 15 because
make him grown up.
Yeah. He comes back. He's trying to get his company back, but things aren't as they seem, and New York isn't as Danny Rand remembers, and dark forces move against him.
Did you just read the synopsis and memorize it?
No, I've just probably, but I have a lot of useless information in my mind, just like Danny Rand does. Because do you want to jump in? Do you want to go with the good or the bad first? Because I have some on each end.
Yeah,
I want to say straight up, top of the bat before we get into anything. It's not as bad as people have been saying.
It's not as bad as people have been saying. I'd go as far as saying it's probably the worst of the Marvel Netflix stuff.
Yeah, it's about on par for me with like the back end of Luke Cage's season. Yeah, that's about where it stands for me. But I think the first couple of episodes are slow, and it does take a while to get into it. But once
I feel like because the first couple of episodes were all him trying to get back into Rand, and it's like I don't feel they needed that to go so long. I feel like they could have done that within one episode.
There's a lot of things you need to kind of, as you're watching the show, understand about the character before you can appreciate the show and go forward. Like, okay, now I get it. The first thing I think you need to accept about the show is that Danny Rand is a fucking idiot.
Oh,
he is of all of these Defenders, he is the biggest idiot of all of them. Because we've got Matt Murdock,
lawyer,
graduated cum laude from Harvard.
Don't know what cum laude means, but it's
basically like top of his class, one of the real smart guy. So he's very smart. Jessica Jones, she didn't go to. I don't think she went to Harvard, but she's a private investigator.
Yeah,
she's tenacious. She's street smart.
Yeah, she's a different set of smarts, but she's a pretty smart person.
She understands New York.
Yeah, and Luke Cage,
he was a cop in a previous life.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of education that goes into being that. He's also, he reads a lot. He's an avid reader, an avid consumer of black literature. So he is a very literary and smart man. Danny Rand spent 15 years being beaten by monks.
Yeah. So pretty much all we've seen of Quan Lun, because he goes on about all the things him and Davos did together. He talks about
I just want to pause you there. Can we do that again? But get rid of Davos's name, because that's kind of a spoiler.
No, he talked about Davos.
No. Well, let's get rid of that bit.
Oh, what was I even saying?
So he's going to. He talks about Quan Lun.
Yeah, he talks about Quan Lun all the time, like all the things he did there and all the good things about it. But we never see the good things about Quan Lun. All we ever see of Inside Quan Lun is him getting beaten by monks.
Yeah, that's. I'll get into some technical aspects, but we'll just go through the story characters here. That he doesn't know anything, and once you accept that, he gets not likable. I don't think he's ever likable in this show.
No,
he's one of the most least likable characters. Like all of these defenders, these Netflix street heroes, they have problems. Matt, he has a lot of things that he has to deal with, and he has a lot of problems. But you could see his point of view. Jessica Jones, she's got a lot of problems, but you could see her point of view. Luke Cage, a lot of problems. Same, you can see his point of view. Danny, it takes a while to see his point of view, and he's real dumb.
It takes a while to see that there's anything at all going on in his head.
Yeah.
It takes a while to see that there's any sort of inner turmoil, because when you boil it down, that's what these Marvel Netflix stuff is about. They're a lot more about the tortured hero than about, your Captain Americas.
No.
So, and it takes so long to start to see any of that in him.
Because at first, you're just like, who is this homeless man? Why does he keep going to these people? Because he keeps going to these Meachums, right? The Meachums are some characters. This is another a negative thing. I don't want to jump all into the negative stuff. I'll go into the positive stuff last, because we'll go into the negative. I hate the Meachums.
Like, even Joy?
The actress who plays Joy is fine in individual scenes. She carries those emotions well. But the overall arc of Joy and where she keeps jumping alliances and points of view and the way she carries herself
she kind of
is so inconsistent.
Yeah, she's inconsistent.
I have no idea who the character is.
Yeah, she's inconsistent. She flip-flops
a lot.
1 minute she's with this person, and 1 minute she's with this person.
1 minute she cares about this person, next minute she's betraying that person, and you can never quite tell why. You don't know where her allegiances lie a lot of the show. I don't have as many problems with her as I do with Ward. I don't know if it's just the actor who plays Ward. I don't know if it's the way that Ward is written, but I hate this character so much.
So do you hate it as the way you're meant to hate him?
I don't know. I don't want to see his character I don't hate him in the way you hate a good villain. It's I hope we see that villain again so they can come in and ruin things. I don't hate him in the way that you hate a Joffrey. Which is the way I feel that's a good kind of hate for a villain. I hate a Joffrey because that Joffrey's he's a terrible person, but I want to see what he does next. If Ward, if they just wrote this character out of the Marvel Universe, good. Get him out. I hate him. It also could be that he just looks like one of Donald Trump's sons. So I'm sitting there
he has a quite punchable face.
Oh, so punchable. And he's so monotone throughout the whole series. Just, what are you talking about, Danny? That's crazy. Fuck off!
Yeah. I will say, though, he's the one of the characters that his motivations were always pretty clear and out
His
in the open.
motivations are pretty clear. He's not I don't think I have a writing with the overall arc of his character. maybe it's just his performance that he's so monotone in everything he does.
Yeah,
and
I think that's my main thing about him. The performance I wasn't keen on, but I feel he had a good arc. You could always understand his motivations, and all his actions made sense. So,
yeah. I didn't mind Harold Meacham so much. He was maybe that I was giving him some leeway because he's David Wenham and he's Australian, so I'm like, you're Australian, you're all right, you get a pass.
Yeah.
That might be it. But
no, he was fine.
He was fine,
but I feel like Danny was just so dumb.
Danny is so dumb.
I was about to say something that was a spoiler, but I'll go back to Danny is so dumb.
Yeah, and so let's move through some other characters. But there's other characters in here who I do like.
Do we want to talk about the shining light of the show?
Colleen Wing.
Colleen
Wing is great. She's a great character. She's acted well. That was a great casting choice.
She's the best part of this show. I'm willing to say
one of the
best part of this show.
I think her and Claire Temple, and Madame Gao. I think those three women. Are the best parts.
The women are the best part of Iron Fist.
Best parts of Iron Fist.
Three women, the best part of a show about a billionaire, white male.
There are some choices in the way they use Madame Gao that I thought I didn't quite like, just because it was some things I'd seen before but done cheaper.
Yeah. I kind of want to say something that might
we'll
be
get
a spoiler.
Yeah, we'll get into that in spoilers. There's a thing they do with Madame Gao that I've seen before in other things done better or just done before, so it didn't have the impact that I think they wanted it to have. But the actress who plays her, I can't quite remember her name. She's great.
She's great.
I love
the performance, the delivery of all her lines.
I want to see more of her. So that more of her is good. Yeah. Claire Temple Rosario Dawson she needs her own show. Like her and Jaren Hogarth. Another great thing about this show. 4 women who's
the women are just the best part of Iron Fist.
Fucking save this show.
Yeah,
so
much. The women are just the best part.
So. Yeah. Yes, because Claire Temple, I feel at this point you just it is a bit contrived that she keeps running into.
I feel like they might be working their way to giving her a show. Maybe because she was training with Colleen in this.
Yeah, I feel like
she's got a weird Wolverine claws.
Yeah, she's got weird claw things now that she picked them up and is like, I guess these are my weapons of choice now.
Yeah.
Ha! Claws.
I feel like the one ridiculous thing though is that she did get into a few fights with Colleen and Danny, and while Colleen and Danny, as trained as they are, they're struggling, but Claire still somehow holds her own when she just has these claws. That's one thing that I kind of didn't seem right to me.
Maybe she just got a few lucky blows in. Maybe because in the chaos of the...
Yep, she was in at least 3 fights, and each time, nothing happened to her. When Colleen and Danny were struggling with the fights. It was one thing that was weird to me.
There's some choices they made with, so when you think Iron Fist, when you think, the Iron Fist, the immortal weapon, the living weapon, yet they keep talking about this. The guy who's trained for 15 years with monks, day in, day out, day and night, kung fu, constantly. You think, okay, that guy should be the best fighter in the world. He should be the best at kung fu. Did Danny Rand seem to you to be the best at kung fu? No!
That's one thing I was going to bring up, that he did not seem to be that great at kung fu.
The action sequences in this show, later on they got better. I feel like there's a couple of fights towards the end that I thought, okay, those were pretty good.
Yeah.
But especially early on, these fights, and I heard heard somewhere that Vin Jones only got 15 minutes to try and do a choreography thing for these fights, which is not long enough. And God bless him, if he only got 15 minutes, that's a great effort on his part. He tried.
Yeah, if that's true, then it's not his fault. It's the producer's fault.
The action sequences in this show should have been
better,
the best in the whole Marvel universe, and they just weren't.
The Daredevil action sequences are still better.
Still the best. Still some of the best in the whole Marvel universe, and these should have been fucking amazing to look at. There's a show out at the moment, Into the Badlands, which is on AMC. That's the kind of kung fu action I should have been getting. because that show, especially a lot of the fight scenes felt very slow. Like punches and stuff would be thrown, and it would seem really slow.
Yeah.
And I feel like all of these action sequences, and maybe it's also because I watched like Ip Man a couple of days before, where Donnie Yen is just throwing these super fast punches. I want every action sequences, even if you have to speed up the footage, to seem fast and dangerous and like it's the most like deadly people in the world going at it, not some slow choreographed dance number thing.
Yeah. So the only times that I got the feeling that he could be the greatest martial artist in the world is those times where, you know, he's just walking and someone jumps at him, he'll just do those two hand movements, then they'll be on the ground. You know those ones?
Yeah, there's a few moments like
those,
that where
those are the ones where I'm like,
just
okay,
a slight movement and then they'll fall down, and it's like
that,
okay,
that is Iron Fist.
There's also a moment where was kind of contrived and special effective, but like he moves and it's like, does that translate to a visual thing where like there's like his hand kind of like it trails a bit and he's like stopping someone's fists. It's a bit contrived, and I would have preferred to see that like a fast motion thing, but it's very kind of like the Matrix where like he's not even like paying attention and he's just like waff waff waff. There should have been more moments like that where like it should have been the emotional context and the maybe overwhelming numbers that stumped Danny Rand, not just a couple of guys like grabbing him from behind.
Because there were never any huge scenes where he's just up against so many people. It's always just like one guy that he's struggling with.
There's one scene where like, okay, he's kind of more like the Iron Fist there. I think it's episode like 11 or 10. It's in the back half.
Yeah.
The back half episodes, I will say the fight scenes got better. They got better at figuring out what they should be doing. Like there's a fight, episode 6, he goes for like a tournament thing.
That was pretty cool.
Yeah, and he fights like 3 different kinds of people. That was pretty cool. Watching that, I was just realizing like the show should have been him going up against like a Mortal Kombat kind of thing, where he should have been facing off against more and more difficult opponents as the show went on, more and more like skilled fighters. Like I've talked about Matt Fraction's like the Immortal Iron Fist run. Yeah, where in that he has to face off against all these different immortal weapons from the different 7 cities of heaven. That should have been what the show was about. It should have been just that, him going up against all these other weapons. That would have been amazing.
Here's one of the main complaints that I have. I think one of the main plot points should have been different. Because he came back from Kwanlun.
Yeah.
And he talks about, I am, the enemy of the hand, sworn enemy of the hand. And then they're like, oh, have you ever fought the hand before? No, I've never fought them before. They were basically a myth to us. I did not like that plot point. I felt like, I know that on that they built a lot of conflict that was in the second half of this season, but I felt like the show maybe would have worked better, maybe would have done a better job of convincing me that he was the Iron Fist. He was like, oh no, I've been going all around the world tracking the hand. I'm in New York because I tracked the hand here. How much better could that have made the season if they went with that as a major plot point of why it's in New York?
It would have been more interesting, if like he'd been sent by Kwanlun out into the world to like, you have to go out and track down the hand. You will destroy them.
I mean, yes, it would change some of the conflict.
It would change the conflict. They would have to restructure the entire show.
Well, the second half of the season at least. But I feel like that would have made a better show. I'd
almost like to do an entire podcast just about what I would have done season 1 of Iron Fist.
Well, that's what I would have done. I would have had, he's been the Iron Fist for a while. He's going around the world fighting hands.
I'm just going to change the structure of this podcast. So we're going to... We're going to talk about some of the good things we like, then we're going to go into spoilers, and then instead of recommendations, how would we have done season 1 of Iron Fist?
I've already said how I've done it.
Okay, yeah, well, we're going to expand on that. Okay, so some good things. In the second half, the fight scenes do get better. You do understand Danny a bit more, and there are some good character moments, like Claire Temple, Colleen Wing, Jaren Hogarth, Madame Gao, and a couple of characters that get introduced in the back half that are spoilers that I'll mention when we get spoilers. But yeah, those characters thought, okay, those are interesting. And I get that there's like you can't. They didn't have the budget to show Shaolo the Undying, but if you in the comics, do you know how he gets his Iron Fist power? He punches into the molten heart of a dragon. I know you can't show a dragon, but could you at least, in the comic, it's not even, the heart isn't even in the dragon. It's in like a pot that the dragon guards. You could have shown him walking up to like a pot that the dragon is guarding and punching into the molten thing and getting the Iron Fist. I just feel like of all like the Marvel shows, they should have thrown more money at this. They should have thrown someone who was more competent. I don't know what Scott Buck, the showrunner, has done before, but he didn't seem passionate about it. Like the show's like individual episodes kind of shined when you had directors who were like passionate about what was going on.
When directors had a good vision.
Like episode 6 was directed by the RZA from Wu-Tang Clan, and he's done a movie before called The Man with the Iron Fists, so he knows a thing or two about Iron Fists.
And episode 6 was one of the stronger ones.
It's one of the stronger ones. Yeah, it's the turning point for the season where like, okay, this, and then the middle half gets good. The last episode dips a bit, but up until like about from 6 to 12, it's pretty consistently mostly good.
Yeah,
but
see, as I was saying before, I feel like that this is one episode that I probably shouldn't mention till we're into spoilers. That really feels like you can talk about just that episode and encapsulate your feelings on the entire season. Because it's a very Luke Cage episode 7 episode, whereas it can be divisive.
Yeah, I don't hate the show, and I don't think it deserves like a 14% on Rotten Tomatoes. I think that's a bit... The absolute hate that it's getting is a bit harsh. There are some good things in here. It's still shot very well.
Yeah, actually, I want to address some of the hate, because I feel like some of the hate is coming from people like, oh, they should have cast an Asian lead.
Yeah, I didn't have any problem with that. Like, they've obviously kind of avoided that controversy. They don't really address it in the show at all.
Yeah.
Like, there's no talk about, what is this white boy doing kung fu thing? There's none of that.
Yeah, because it makes sense why Danny Rand is doing it. Because you have the origin story. It makes sense. He's playing Crash, Himalayas, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And like, I wouldn't have argued. It wouldn't have been a problem to me if they did cast an Asian American lead.
There's only one argument that I've seen for like why a certain Asian person should have been the Iron Fist, and I'll get into that in spoilers because it's someone who actually ends up being on the show. Yeah. That's the only argument I've seen of like, okay, maybe that has some merit, but in terms of like being, it's pretty true to like the origin story in the comics. So like, and Finn Jones, he has the potential to be a good Iron Fist in Defenders. I'm hoping there with someone who's actually, with some good people writing it, that'll actually be better.
I'm looking forward to seeing how he works with Daredevil. Because I feel like Defenders is going to be very Daredevil and Iron Fist, Luke Cage and Jessica Jones.
I feel like
obviously they'll all mingle, but I feel like maybe it might be a bit, grouped off in some parts.
I would like some Danny and Luke Cage moments. I'm feeling probably one of the better decisions they could probably make with these two shows is instead of doing Luke Cage season 2 and Iron Fist season 2, they do a
Luke Cage and Iron Fist
Heroes for Hire show
between those two shows they have 4 characters who have been in the Heroes for Hire. 4 is enough. You can make Heroes for Hire with 4.
I keep seeing these articles and like oh, we're gonna in these different seasons we're gonna do this stuff with Iron Fist, and I'm like, I wouldn't start talking about different seasons of Iron Fist. I wouldn't play your cards so close to your chest. I'd get your shit out now and impress people now, because we didn't hate it, but people kind of did. So maybe
I feel like we need to do what you said and make Pop's Barbershop into the Heroes for Hire HQ.
Yes, that's what needs to happen.
Luke
Also,
Cage,
give this motherfucker a costume, not because he needs one. There was no point in the show. I was like, oh yeah, the character needs a costume. He needs a costume so that you can put a stuntman in that costume and the action scenes can be fucking good.
Yep.
Instead of giving 15 minutes to Finn Jones and telling him, hey, now you have to make it look like you're the best. You're a living weapon. Sorry, what?
Can I have a couple of months training? No.
No.
We're shooting in 15.
15 minutes. Here. Go be the immortal Iron Fist, the living weapon. Give him a costume for that reason. That's one of the reasons why Daredevil works so well, is that you can put a fucking stuntman in that
As
Daredevil
much as we love
costume.
Charlie Cox.
Charlie Cox is great. He beefed up. He's fucking beefier than Danny Rand is in the show. He's jacked as shit. Charlie Cox is jacked. He did a lot of training, and he looks good in those fight scenes that he does. Maybe it's just because the choreography people for Daredevil are better at this shit. Which is another thing I want to mention. Sound design. When Daredevil punches people, it sounds like he's punching people with an iron fist. When Danny Rand punches people...
It's a very...
It's a little tap.
Yeah. It has that sound.
I think they mentioned this on the Weekly Planet, but I'll mention it again here because it's a good point. The Iron Fist should have made a sound.
Yeah.
Do you think that when that thing lights up, it should have a kind of like a, you know how in Fallout when there's lady robot things shoot lasers out of their face at you? That sound.
Yeah.
That should have been the Iron Fist sound. And when he's swinging it around, it should be kind of like a lightsaber, but a fist.
Yeah,
It should be.
yeah.
That's the sound the Iron Fist should be making, not this kind of silent thing. And there's another thing I'll get into with spoilers.
Mm-hmm.
I think the Iron Fist sequences are very underutilized. So you should have been using that fist more and in more creative ways. And
I feel like at least half of the season you're like, oh, why can't I use the Iron Fist right now? There's at least 3 times where he loses the Iron Fist.
There was a lot of sequences that are very contrived in the show. And
well, I feel like there was...
It's weird because most of these other Netflix shows, you can judge them almost entirely on their first scene. Like Daredevil, you knew they were going to get that stuff right because the first 3 scenes before the opening credits for that show perfectly encapsulate what that show is about, what the character is about, and what the show is going to do.
It opens, he's in the confessional.
No, first up, it opens, it's the accident. So you have his origin, you have his confessional, so that's his religion, and then you have him beating up people and saving some people who are being human trafficked. You have him origin, what makes him different, the blindness and the religion, and then you have an action sequence, his super heroics. Jessica Jones, you open up, she's in...
Yeah, that voiceover thing, which can be cheesy, but it worked well with her.
She's a very noir character, so you have that voiceover. It's noir. You have her in her investigation office. She's throwing someone through a window, so you saw him. She's a tough, doesn't take shit. She's drinking. She goes and takes some photos, snaps some photos of people. Bam, you encapsulate all the things you need to know about her character right at the bat. Luke Cage.
We did already know him coming into this, so that's one thing.
Yeah, they had a little bit more leeway just because we'd already seen him in Jessica Jones. But what was the opening scene for Luke Cage? Was that in the barbershop?
I think it was in the barbershop, yeah.
But it was it was Harlem. Harlem was the focus, and Luke Cage was a character.
Yeah, and they were talking about basketball. He was sweeping head, minding his own business. That's what Luke Cage is. He's just a man minding his own business.
You understood his character there. Danny Rand, that wouldn't have been the scene I would have opened up with.
No.
But third of this podcast, I'll get into what I would have done with the Immortal Iron Fist. So before we get into spoilers, I'll say the first half of the show is pretty slow, but there is a metaphor they use at some point where when you're doing a kumite or whatever, what are they called? Where he's demonstrating his moves, you start off slow and then you end up fast. It's kind of that's kind of how the show revolves.
Yeah.
And there are some clever things in there where they talk about someone passing you by as a stranger or something, which I'll get into in a second. Spoilers, but there are some clever things in here, and the fights in the second half are better. And there's a couple of fights in here that are pretty good and are pretty entertaining.
Yeah. And the story and the plot was interesting enough. While I will say there was part of the main antagonist that was very convoluted.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it still kept me on board enough that I was like, okay, let's see what these villains are doing.
Yeah. So I'd probably give it a 6 out of 10.
Yeah, I was thinking 6.
Like it's not as bad as people were saying it was, because it kept me engrossed that I kept wanting to watch the next episode. Yeah. So there was enough of that, and I was thinking about it a lot.
See, it really feels... It probably sounds like we're shitting on it a bit, but it's like... You gotta understand, it's easier to talk about what's bad about a show than what's good about it.
But it is... If you've already invested all this time into all these Marvel shows, if you're like us and you've watched every Marvel movie, every Marvel TV show, even like the bad episodes of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., if you stuck through the bad episodes of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., you can get through this.
I think they recently came out with a statistic. Apparently there's currently like 64 hours worth of MCU content.
It's like 6 days, 14... It takes like a week.
Oh, yeah.
It's like roughly a week to watch all of the Marvel stuff, the one-shots and everything. So if you're like us and if you've gotten through all that shit, you can make it through this. Defenders is coming up. There's enough in here that's probably going to contextualize for what's happening in Defenders.
Yeah.
So it's worth watching for that. And there are some cool action sequences in the back half. And Colleen Wing is a cool character. She has some cool fight scenes. There's a fight scene she has where it's like the 2-on-1 fight scene in a cage where they play Run the Jewels Blockbuster Night Part 1.
Yeah.
Great song. I love that song, so that improves everything.
They censored it real funnily, though. Like, what did he say? Isn't it like motherfucker?
Yeah.
They censored it, and it sounded real weird.
There's a bit in the song where it's just like, bitch, yeah, motherfucker, come on. And they censor that, and it's just like, that's weird.
Yeah. It was a slightly different mix as well.
Come on.
Like, I'm not used to hearing songs I know in TV shows, and you don't realize it until you do, but they kind of do a different mix of the song when they put it in TV shows.
It's a little different mix. They added in... Like, they had the first half, which was Killer Mike's verse, and then they went into the instrumental for a bit before they got into the fight. And then when they were in the fight, they cut back to LP's verse and moved on from there. Her fights in the cages were pretty good. She's pretty good.
See, I got her skill level more than I got Danny's.
Yeah, I was very confused about Danny's skill level.
Yeah.
And I thought it was... Anyway, do you want to give your little quick review thing before we get into spoilers?
Yeah, I feel like there was a lot of weird character motivations at point. Danny was so dumb, and it really... He is
the dumbest of the Defenders, and I'm hoping that leads into some comedy in Defenders where he'll say some
dumb
weird monk shit, and they'll just be like, what the fuck are you talking about? Do you understand anything about this world?
Yeah. So
there should have been more comedy. Like, I feel like I know people complain that these Marvel shows are just all comedy all the time and there's too many jokes. Of all of the Defenders series, this one should have been the funniest. It should have been the funnest. It should have been the most mystical. It should have been Doctor Strange, but with more kung fu.
Yeah. So
there should have been mentions of Doctor Strange. There should have been talk about where we use kind of mysticism to do. I used my chi to kind of fight. There's these other people who throw lightning about, but Iron Fists, man, that's where it's at. And
yeah,
it should have been that.
Yeah, it was. It takes the show takes it out of you a bit.
It does. It's. I kind of want to go back and just watch Daredevil and reinvigorate my
yeah
before I go into Defenders.
Because my is currently at a Nah.
Once I see a Defenders trailer, I'll probably be back to full But until then, they wrapped filming, so it's hopefully that's coming soon.
Let's just get right into
it. Okay, spoilers.
I want to talk about the China episode. I want to talk about the China episode.
Can I talk about the two things I liked about it?
Yeah.
Okay, the two things I liked about it were the two fights. That's the fight where Colleen Wing has with where it's two style fights, which I thought is what the show should have been doing a lot more, is different kung fu styles versus each other. So you have Colleen Wing with her kind of Bushido samurai style versus a Chinese straight sword style. that fight was interesting. That's like, oh, it's two different martial arts styles going up against each other. Which one will come out on top? Danny Rand going up against the Drunken Master guy. I don't know who he is in the comics. I think he's a character who's supposed to... He hunts down and kills Iron Fists before they turn 30 or something.
Yeah.
Or he's like from a long line of people who do that, but he's slightly different here. He was great. I love Drunken Style. I love Drunken Master. It's one of my favorite Jackie Chan movies, both of them. And he was great. And did you feel, while watching that fight, man, I hope that Drunken Master guy wins. Fuck Danny Rand.
Everything he said made sense. It was real dumb.
Made sense. Like, yeah, I'm defending these Nazis, but that's what I promised I'd do. I'm doing what I said I would do. You're supposed to be defending Kun Lun. Why aren't you there defending it? It's like, man, Danny, this guy's making some good points, and his fighting style is more interesting than you. And he actually looks like he knows Kung Fu.
The thing with their interactions, though, is Danny didn't have anything to say to him.
No.
He didn't talk. He was just like, I have to defeat you. I have to
defeat you. And he's like,
no, Danny, have a conversation. This could be a great verbal back and forth where we get some context. You get some character development. Yes. But he's just constantly yelling, no, I have to defeat you. I have to get in the door. You're a bad person. You have the hand. No. Show that you are capable of deeper thought and just have the conversation that he's trying to have with you.
So yeah, I like that fight, but fuck that. That's an episode that really shows, like, it does encapsulate why the problems with this series is like, okay, some of these fights are interesting, but the show is so fucking cheap. Not for 1 second do you think, oh yeah, they're in China. It just looks like the docks of Brooklyn. It looks like some New York docks. The show is so fucking cheap. There's every time it would flash back where like he'd be going through like the pass to get to Kunlun. Those are some of the fakest looking rocks I've ever seen in my life.
Like,
it just looks like some sheared bits of foam.
And when he's on the mountain in the background, like worst green screen I've seen in my life.
Oh my god, so bad. I get that the show didn't have like that huge a budget, but fuck me, man. Like, this is something I was saying, like, way back when they announced Iron Fist. I was like, oh, I hope they give this show some money, because Kunlun is, like, it's a big, like, a magical city-looking thing. It should look like an Asian Asgard.
But...
Didn't fucking see it. See it for 1 second.
Well, yeah, we see it in the distance, which is probably a practical effect thing. They probably just fucking made it.
Made a model.
It was probably, like... 30 centimeters big.
Oh my god, this show is... I kind of almost wish they'd just done like a TV movie, and like the budget that they would have used to create 13 episodes, craft that in to 2.5 hours, because at least then we would have got more Iron Fist action, more Kunlun. If Doctor Strange can do some fucking big mystical thing in like 2.5 hours, and I understand the character of Doctor Strange, they could do that with Iron Fist.
Yeah.
Fucking, it's just, this show has so many shortcomings where like there'll be a moment where like, oh, this is interesting, this is cool, and then it will just fall short. And that guy who played the Drunken Master guy, I think he auditioned, or he was
they said something.
Shortlisted to be Danny Rand, but then they went with Finn Jones. That guy had so much charisma. He was actually good at martial arts. These little bits that he did were like, oh, that's interesting. And that's the only part of like, man, it would have been good to get someone like him in as Danny Rand.
I mean, Finn Jones was fine, and I can see he still has potential to be a better Danny Rand.
Yeah.
I feel like he
needs to get more jacked. Like,
yeah, and he needs to be better written, so he's not just so dumb, just constantly spewing out these, one-liners about beer and she and blah.
It's so dumb. Ugh.
And
it's just... All right, what problems did you have with that episode?
The problems was almost any time a character talked to another character.
Oh, yeah. All of the emotional dialogue in that was so, like, ham-fisted. That's another thing. The dialogue in this show is ham-fisted as shit. Like, I don't even know, like, if there was, like, a second draft for some of these scripts, because they get like all like the rough like, oh yeah, well, I want them to kind of say something like this, and you'll say something like this. We'll fix it up in the second draft, and no second draft. All the dialogue is so stilted and awful.
Yeah, and it's like I feel like throughout the show in general, the dialogue was very formulaic. It was very just like, oh, I have to do this thing. Why do you have to do this thing? So I can do this thing. Okay. I don't think you should do this thing, but I'm going to do this thing.
I also think it was a weird choice to try and humanize the hand. Especially
yeah, that's
since,
when they got very convoluted.
Like, if
me.
this was the first time we'd seen the hand, that could have been kind of interesting, because I'm like, oh, maybe what, this idea that we have people going in, the idea if they have the hand from the comics, maybe that's different. Maybe they're going to do something different in the show. So there could have been some mystery of like, is the hand good or bad? We don't know. But we've seen the hand in Daredevil Season 2, a fucking it's a ninja death cult.
Yes,
we know what they are. There's no mystery there with like, especially with Colleen being like, no, the hand isn't like this. Like,
we've seen them.
Look, I want to side with you because Danny is being an ignorant, dumb motherfucker, but I've seen what the hand actually are. You're wrong.
Yeah,
this is dumb. Let's get past this.
Yeah, then once you realize,
also the fact that it took Danny so long to realize that place was the hand. Like, they're all wearing red and black. It's all very obvious that, like, oh, these guys are the hand. These guys are the hand. Like, even if I hadn't read up and looked like, oh, who's Bakuto? Oh, he's like the head of the hand for South America. You could have just visually gone, well, it's the hand. That's who this is, Danny. These people are the hand. You should know this. It's the hand.
Wait, while it's on my mind, I want to put in one small problem I had, but it just really annoyed me.
Yeah.
Once he got out of that complex, when it did that big zoom out thing, and you saw on that huge billboard the Rand Enterprises on the billboard, companies like that in real life, they don't have billboards. People don't even know their names, because these are the big companies who, like, they do so many different things that they're not just one thing.
That's another thing. This is more a problem I have with comics in general. These like big companies like Wayne Enterprises, Queen Industries,
everyone
Rand
knows
Industries,
their
whatever.
name.
Like,
and they're like,
what do they do?
Yeah, well,
it's never very clear.
See,
like, they seem to just do everything, like every business thing. Oh, we're in drugs, and we're in this, and we're in that, and we have a power plant. I'm like, what does your company do? What do any of you do?
Yeah, well, in real life, that's what there are a lot of companies like that. They just do everything. But at the same time, those big companies that do everything, you don't hear about them. They don't have TV ads. They don't have billboards.
You don't hear about the Koch brothers. There's nothing out there like,
you wouldn't know their name.
They don't need to advertise. The only way you hear
Danny
about
Rand
them
is front page news, and the only
I get about him being on Forbes is like, okay, I get that, and like, if like I get the power plant thing, like, people being sick, like that is something they'd make like a news story about, but I don't know. That's not so much the problem I have. It's the problem.
I don't know. That was just one problem I had. That like Rand Enterprise had this huge billboard. Like, no, companies like that, you don't hear of them. They are there, but they are operating in the background, out of sight. They'll have a skyscraper, and it'll be one of the skyscrapers. You go to the city and say, I wonder what that skyscraper's for.
You know, it would be a good way to like just slightly indicate that these things happen in the movies. If they could just have like on a coffee table a copy of that Forbes with Danny Rand on the cover of it, that would be a nice little like.
Or just like one of those big shots of New York City, and you just see Rand Enterprises building.
And I would like if in the future of these Marvel Netflix things they switched up from the New York Bulletin to the Daily Bugle, just because now that they have Spider-Man, the Daily Bugle is a thing they can use.
Yeah.
And I feel like they have been avoiding using it, probably because they're going to do something with it in the movies. But if it was just there as like an option of like an optional newspaper thing, there, it would be nice.
Yeah. They also had a shoehorned reference to Karen Page.
There was a lot of shoehorned references in there. Like, oh, I hired an investigator. She's worth every penny. Except when she was drunk. Like,
okay, we get it. You could have just said, I hired a private investigator. We would have gotten it.
Yeah.
And when she gets the reporter gets the story, she calls up and he's like, oh, don't give Karen the front page. Like, why would you say that? Just say, hey, I have this story. people don't talk like that.
I don't mind those so much. And I think it's about time that these Netflix things stop being so scared to just say the Hulk or mention like, hey, some other things that happened, because I'm so sick of like, the incredible green guy or like the flag
big green
wave,
guy, yeah.
Just say the Hulk, or just also people being like surprised about like, I was in a mystical city and from another dimension. Is anyone surprised by shit like that anymore? Especially in New York, where like a fucking portal from space opened up and whales wearing armor poured in and aliens jumped on buildings.
They did kind of mention that though, because when Danny was in the mental institute, the doctor said, since the incident, we have nutcases all over the place claiming to have powers. So they did kind of, say maybe why people wouldn't believe you if you said you have powers.
Maybe some of them are true. Maybe some of them are Inhumans. Also, there should be more mentioning of Inhumans. I feel like that's...
Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. doesn't even exist in the Marvel part of it.
All of these things should just be mentioned more and less kind of like secret. Like when we're talking about, I don't know, like what's the real world equivalent? We're talking about 9/11. You don't say like, oh yeah, the incident. It's
9/11.
9/11. Like that. Even if they had like the date, that would be a good way to like...
I feel like the invasion, if it was the real world, I feel like we'd call it the invasion.
Or like on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., they call it the Battle of New York. Like I feel like if more people just called it like, oh yeah, the Battle of New York, man, that was...
Yeah, well, even in the movies, that's what they refer to it as.
In the movies, they refer to it as the Battle of New York, not the incident. Like when in Civil War, they don't go like, Sokovia, Washington, D.C., the incident.
The incident sounds like Grandpa got drunk at Christmas and got naked and sang on the table. That is the incident. Oh, Grandpa had another incident the other day.
Like I feel like they... I don't know. It's less than the other ones, because I think Luke Cage kind of dealt with it in a cool way, where they had that guy saying like bootleg Blu-ray copies of like, hey, who wants a copy of the Avengers fighting in New York? Like, okay, there would be some guy selling that shit, and he would.
Then they were at the final fight with that big red-eye camera.
That was like, I didn't understand how he got a red-eye camera, but I thought it was funny that he was there like, oh shit, man, superheroes are fighting. Get the fucking get the 4K, man. There should be more people like that out there in New York.
Look at that camera, like, would they even be shooting? They wouldn't even be shooting this on that. That's like a movie camera.
That's a big, like, expensive thing. Like, that's unnecessary. Like, if he had like a DSLR setup, like, cool, but man, where the fuck did he get the money? I guess those incident Blu-rays are selling pretty hot. I guess people are buying them. I don't know. The fighting in this show should have been better. Danny should have been better. Oh, there was a neat thing I thought that happened. Like it's either in like the first or the second episode where Danny's walking along the street, and you can see Madame Gao kind of just in like a track outfit, just walking around like a normal person. At least I think it's her, because it's a small like Asian lady, and I was sitting there like, is that Madame Gao? Was it? She's just in the background and we're not supposed to notice her. And then later on they're talking about like, an enemy may pass you by as a stranger. And it's like, is that what that was supposed to be? Is that...
weird?
Okay. Yeah. Okay, TV show. What did you think of Bakudo?
You could tell something was up from the second he walked in.
Bakudo...
he doesn't even try and act innocent or normal.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's a very Japanese-sounding name.
Yeah.
That motherfucker didn't look Japanese to me.
He looked South American.
I was thinking... I don't know what he looked like, but yeah. Oh, was that a given name to him? Someone give him that name?
Fucked if I know.
I'm very... Also, Davos. Like, I was confused. It's like, so was Davos someone else?
Yeah.
Like Danny, who was like a Pakistani kid from Britain who then ended up in Kunlun at the same time?
Danny mentioned that his father was in Kunlun. Davos' father was there.
Right.
So I think Davos is just native of Kunlun.
So the native accent for Kunlun is...
American?
It had like a British accent, didn't it?
Did he?
Yeah, he had like a British... It was like, I'm Davos. I'm from Kunlun. It's like a very distinctively like from the UK kind of accent.
I don't remember it much.
I didn't mind him. Like he had an intensity to him the whole time that I'm like, I kind of like you. Like, I kind of want you to be following around the Defenders. Like, even if they never go like the full Steel Serpent, like bad guy route, if he was just following around the Defenders, we're like, oh, we have to go do this thing. And it's like, yes. And then we should kill all of them. It's like, Jesus Christ, Davos, calm down. I will never calm down. Like, I appreciated his intensity.
He's going to be a fucking villain now, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, he's Steel Serpent. That's Davos the Steel Serpent is a thing from the comics. He's like his Ironmonger. Like in the comics, he's kind of got like a similar costume to Danny Rand, except it's like, he's even got like the chest tattoo thing, but it's a serpent. It's the same thing on
the
heroine. Yeah. Which is another thing I want to mention about like the Hand. They didn't seem as threatening as they did in Daredevil. Like here, like even the whole heroine thing, like they'd kind of like legitimize it. That is like, oh, we're selling it to everyone, and it's this cool thing. In Daredevil, it seemed kind of more dangerous and dark because she was blinding people who made it, so like they couldn't,
Yeah.
I don't know. It just felt more like kind of suspicious and underground and dangerous. While here, it's just kind of like, well, whatever. And then you have all these like children and the Hand basically recruiting people, like he's Shredder from the Ninja Turtles.
Yeah.
In like that first live action Ninja Turtles movie, that's basically how the Hand felt now. And I was just like, okay, you've turned this from this scary ninja death cult to an after school program.
The whole Hand thing, I didn't like how they were like, oh, there's different sections of the Hand. Like, no, there isn't.
Also, since like early on, I'm like, oh, well, I gotta get Colleen's, distress. She wants to be able to pay for a dojo. If she was a member of the Hand, would the Hand pay for her dojo? Why would she be struggling to keep that dojo open? Like, surely the Hand would have like some interest in like, hey, she sends people our way. We put them in interests of power, like positions of power. Wouldn't we help her out and pay her rent? I didn't like. At first, it cleared up a plot hole. It's like, oh, the scholarship. That's why you got to keep doing like, what scholarship? What's this fucking scholarship? There's no kung fu scholarships. Yes, but that made sense. Like, oh, okay, so it's the scholarship to get into the Hand to do all that stuff. Okay, that makes sense. But how come she couldn't afford rent at her dojo? If she's a part of this, like,
they just wanted her to do cage fighting. It feels like that was just a reason. Let's get some cool scenes where she does cage fighting.
That was a plot hole for me.
Oh yeah, that's definitely something I thought. It's weird that she's struggling for money if she's part of the Hand and she's working with the Hand. Ugh.
This also would have been like a good time to have like a cameo from like a Daredevil or something. Like especially where like Claire could have brought up a bit more of like, hey, I have a friend who's fought the Hand. Maybe you two guys should meet up, trade notes. He's actually fought the Hand. You never have before. Maybe he can tell you a couple of things.
Yeah, I feel like it was weird that Claire didn't even bring it up in the slightest. I mean, I get that Claire and Matt aren't on the best of terms, and, the Hand showed up at our hospital after he brought patients there, and they kind of killed her friend. But,
But then she went and did the same thing in this series where he brought the chemist or whatever to the hospital. The Hand imported him in. They were going to come after him. So she did the exact same goddamn thing. This show is tiring.
Yeah.
It's enjoyable to watch while you're watching it.
I don't think I'm going to rewatch it, though.
No, it's not one I'm going to go back to. Like Daredevil, I'm going to go back to. Luke Cage, I could probably go back to. Jessica Jones, I'm probably going to go back to at some point because David Tennant is fucking tremendous in that show. There's no...
Oh, yeah.
There's no... Like, even a Luke Cage has a Mahershala Ali, and he wasn't one of the best villains, but he was interesting. And even the weird guy playing his not brother or whatever, he was interesting. It's like, okay, I was liking the other guy more, but I kind of like you.
Yeah, Diamondback.
There's no like strong villain here. There's Madame Gao. Okay, the thing I was talking about earlier of like the scene they did with Madame Gao, that I thought I've seen this before, but done better or just done before was the scene where they capture Madame Gao and they put her in like the dojo and they each go in and she mind tricks them or whatever. Like, oh, I will talk you out of thinking this certain way. We've seen that shit, but that's Loki. That's motherfucking Silver from Spectre. That's the Joker in The Dark Knight. All these people, it didn't end up being, I guess it kind of ended up being that she was like, they will come for me and my people will come and get me. But I wasn't like, I wanted you to capture me. At least it wasn't that. But still, I've seen this like, I will trick you with my words thing before. And it wasn't done as good as I've seen it in the past.
Well.
Like,
because they didn't really credit to like, they didn't fall for it at all.
All credit to the actress playing Madame Gao. She
great. Worked it. She worked it.
Also, I thought it is kind of weird. Like, how did they get Madame Gao back into the country? And how did they get her from China to... It's almost like the show forgot that they went to China to get her. Because it seemed like, and we're back at the dojo. It's like they just driven round the corner.
Yeah, and we get it that they had, Danny's private jet. But...
I feel like the one joke that it should have landed better, but didn't, was when Davos is with Danny and Danny's driving around. It's like... And Danny's like, oh, you get out of the way, I'm driving. It's like... And Davos is like... Do you even have your license? He's like, well, no, but I'm rich. So that joke should have landed better, but I think it was something about the delivery, or maybe it's just because they hadn't mentioned it earlier.
I know, I didn't really like it because I'm like, oh yeah, rich white people can do what they want, sure. Yeah, let's not open that can of worms though. We're at 57 minutes, so do we want to get into our last bit where you wanted to say how you do the show?
Okay, how would I do this show? Definitely, I'm not saying I would have cast an Asian person, but I would have given him a costume and would have made the costume like, oh, there's that scene where like in the 1940s.
Yeah, and they had the costume. Yeah. You could only just see it.
Yeah. There's like a behind the scenes picture where you see it. Looks fucking amazing. He should have had like the mask and stuff, and that should have been a part of like the Iron Fist wears this symbol of the Iron Fist. It should have been like, it doesn't necessarily need to be like the big popped up collar or whatever. But the mask, he needs to wear the mask. Mm-hmm. And he needs to have like a kind of a green outfit, and he should have put it on. Like, I don't understand why that is so difficult to understand. Like, he should have been wearing it as like, when I am the Iron Fist, I must fully commit to being the Iron Fist, and I will wear this costume of the Iron Fist to show that I'm paying homage to the Iron Fist. He should have come, like you said, he should have been left Kunlun not because leaving personal journey. Should have left because they've told him, you must go down and you must hunt the hand. And then he's hunting the hand around the world, and then he ends up back in New York, somewhere he never expected to come back to. He sees how his company is running, and he's like, and then that should have been the conflict where like, I have to get rid of the hand, but this is my father's legacy, this is my family's legacy. Yeah. I have some interest, and that should have been where the conflict...
that should have been where his inner turmoil came from, because they still did the, his responsibility as Danny Rand versus...
And you could still have Davos coming out to get him, but instead of him being like, oh, you need to come back to Kunlun, the past is undefended, it should be him coming out as like, how goes your hunt for the hand? Why are you messing around with all this business stuff? Like, you should have been focusing...
Yeah, he should have came back, realized the hand was in his business, thought, okay, I'm going to get my business
maybe
back.
Questioning his methods, yeah. And you just have him be like... Yeah, just this amazing martial artist that's like so... And have him have that, like, fucking... The people at Kunlun not just beat him day in and day out and making him an idiot, but good at punching. He should have some sense of strategy. He should have some sense of lay of land. Like, you can have a few things where it's kind of like, oh, this is different to how I remember.
Yeah, I can get the not understanding a lot of the way the Western world now works, but I feel like even the show forgot that he was like 10 years old when he went missing.
He should, also in 2002, he shouldn't be that surprised by the internet. Like,
no,
we had the internet in 2002. Like, he could be more surprised of like, oh shit, look at these phones,
especially
man.
if he was rich. Especially if he was rich, he would have had the internet.
He should have been smarter, and there should have just been more kind of personal conflict with him. Like, well, I have to destroy the hand, but I also have to try and focus on my company. And at first he's kind of like, no, I'm just focusing on the hand. I have to destroy the hand. But then he finds out that the hand has infested the company, so he's trying to go back into the company, not for so much like these family reasons, like those are there and those are kind of making him question things, but he's trying to get back his company so that he can find out what the hand is doing.
Yeah, that would have worked so much better.
That's what it should have been.
And you still would have been able to have the you know, the tensions with Davos and the inner turmoil of being Danny Rand versus being the Iron
And then
Fist.
when the Hand realizes that he is there after them, they hire assassins. All of these, they like put out a bounty, like a kind of a John Wick style bounty. Is like, hey, martial arts assassins, whoever can bring us the head of even the hand of the Iron Fist, bring the hand of the Iron Fist, and you will receive like bountiful treasures. And that's how, like, even the episode 6, which is something I wanted to see more of, like where you bring in like Bride of Nine Spiders, where you're bringing in Scythe, where you're bringing in those 2 Russian dudes. There should have been more of that, of like assassins sent by the Hand coming after him, and he has to take them on, and each time he gets a little bit more information and he's getting a little bit closer to defeating the Hand. And then you even have scenes where like he's somewhere hanging out and he'll be like, it's in like the trailer for John Wick 2 where like he's talking to someone and then everyone around him kind of like stops and looks at him. There should have been that moment where like he's like thinking like, you know, he's so good at martial arts and he's been beating them up back and again, and he's thinking, he's getting cocky and he's like, I'm coming for you and I will destroy your organization. I am the immortal Iron Fist. And they're like, you don't understand. We're everywhere. And then everyone around him fucking stops, turns and looks at him. How fucking badass would that be?
That would have been cool.
Yes, that would have been an amazing scene where they're all like, they stop and look at him and he's just like, oh, and they're like, New York is ours, Danny Rand. Your company is ours, Danny Rand. We will destroy you. Then you get some cool conflict there. You can even have him lose. You can have him lose to the Hand, and then at the end of the season, you have him realize, I need help. I can't do this by myself.
Defenders.
And you form the Defenders. That's what this season should have been, but instead it's some bullshit. God damn it.
we have Isaac in the background agreeing.
Yes.
Yeah. I feel like you kind of took my idea and built on it. I like that.
Yeah, because there's some good ideas there. He should have been the best martial artist in the world, but the conflict is him being like, oh, I have this mission and I have this thing I need to do, but I have this other thing I need to do. Also, you need to. This is my dream idea, so fuck it. There's no budget. Should have been more. There should have been like an episode like Luke Cage had in the prison, where like you see his origin. You should have had more of Kunlun. You should have seen Shaolin the Undying. Should have been an epic fight with a dragon.
Mm-hmm.
That should have been in there. You should have seen more of like Kunlun, like his life there.
Yeah, not just rocky paths in the mountains.
No, and you have everyone in like weird, silly comic booky costumes. This should be the most comic booky of all of these shows, and it should be him coming from like this, not just like, oh, coming from a world where like monk robes and stuff. I come from a world of like where everyone is dressed like a superhero. Everyone is like, there just should have been more like cool kung fu things in this show. It wasn't enough.
Not enough good kung fu.
Even like the intro like has that element of like, it builds you up. You're thinking, oh, it's got to be this cool, exciting thing. It's like a do 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 do, and he's like, he spins around and then anticlimactic. Like that intro should end with him lighting up the Iron Fist and
he waited too long to get out the Iron Fist.
Yeah.
Anyway, is there anything else you wanted to mention, or should we wrap this shit out?
What other like Easter egg things? Apparently that character who's like teaching, who gets like the scholarship and breaks his leg in that fight to get out of the compound. He was in like one of the later episodes of Luke Cage.
Fair enough.
I think he was in there. The escape from the Hand compound with Danny and Davos is pretty good. That's actually a really good fight. The end fight in episode 12 between Colleen and Bakuto and Danny and Davos is pretty good. When you show like this, like in the trailer for Iron Fist, when he does that punch into the ground and like destroys the office, you show something like that in a trailer,
real cool.
And you think, wow, if that's what they're showing in the trailer, what else is he going to do with the Iron Fist? That's the most spectacular thing he does. Done in the last episode. So fucking disappointing. Yeah. That shouldn't have been. If that's the most exciting thing he does with the Iron Fist, don't show that in the trailer. Don't put that in the trailer. That should have been early on, midway, in fact, I don't put it at the start, but midway through the season, he just punches the ground. He has to get out of somewhere, and he punches the office, and then from there, he does even more cool and interesting things with the Iron Fist. Like maybe he has to. Maybe he's got someone and he has to take him back somewhere for information. So he's one-handed. So he's holding onto someone one-handed, and he's got the Iron Fist there, and he has to punch his way out of scenario.
He really just uses it as a shield.
A shield every now and then, or to like bust open a door. There should have been more scenes with him using the Iron Fist. Also, there's that thing like early on where like he flips over a car, very kind of like Spider-Man like. Maybe expand on that. Maybe he has like superhuman reflexes now, and maybe like you can do that thing where like the fights can be slightly slower, but you're seeing it from like Danny's perspective, where like he's like, you know how when they're promoting it, you can see they do that thing where like he'll make a move and then there'll be like kind of like remnants of his moves kind of like moving about him and all just like posters and stuff. Maybe you incorporate that into the show where like he can see all the moves that people might make, and you incorporate that, like that's how he sees the world, of like he's thinking like 10 steps ahead of like every movement that people make. He's like, oh, well, I'm gonna do this so I can do this kapa kung fu shit. Make it seem like, even if you have him be kind of like a little bit business dumb or dumb about certain things, make it seem like he actually knows so much about kung fu. He didn't seem like he knew that much about kung fu.
He was good. He was.
Finn Jones needs to get more jacked. Like he didn't look jacked enough. Needs to be more jacked. Like he doesn't need to be big necessarily, but like how Bruce Lee used to be.
Yeah.
Like Bruce Lee in his heyday, he was skinny, but he was the most jacked, skinny-looking dude out there, and that's what Finn Jones needs to be. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's all I have to say about this show.
Yeah.
I haven't really watched anything else, so that's all I've been thinking about. Next week we're gonna do probably Power Rangers.
Yeah, probably. I don't know. I haven't looked.
Power Rangers, and then I think Ghost in the Shell. I think Ghost in the Shell comes out next week, but we'll do Power Rangers next week. Or we can do Power Rangers and Ghost in the Shell. Do like two, because they're two things based off a Japanese property.
We'll
technically.
We'll talk about it.
We'll talk about it. We'll see.
Mic.
I know I'm going to see Power Rangers. I haven't decided if I'm going to see Ghost in the Shell yet. So
I'm seeing Ghost in the Shell.
Well, then we'll probably talk about both of them. Fuck it, you know.
Anyway,
why not? All right, if you want to tell us what you thought of Iron Fist, let us know on facebook.com/PCMR podcast. We're also on Twitter @PCMR podcast. We also have an Instagram @PCMR podcast. I haven't posted there in a while. I'm going to try and get back into that. I haven't been using it a lot. I think the last thing I posted there was about The Last Jedi. I'll try and get back into that. We also, personal Twitter accounts. I'm at Aiden's Vlog, AIDANSVLOG.
I'm at MeMan125, spelled how it sounds.
Thank you. We have the email account, PCMRpodcast@gmail.com. We have the website, PCMRpodcast.net. You can find us on YouTube and iTunes. You can subscribe and rate us or whatever there.
Review us.
It helps out.
Cat.
Yep. And we'll see you next week for more Asian-y kung fu goodness.
Yeah, well, we hope. We hope it's goodness.
There's a lot of things involving kung fu coming up.
There is.
Yeah.
But until then,
see you. Oh, I will say this. I watched the first episode of the new season of Into the Badlands.
Oh, yeah.
That's the kung fu. If you felt a little disappointed by Iron Fist kung fu, I'll watch that. It's real good. Like
noted.
Don't even like go for like context from season 1. Like watch that and then go back to season 1. But there's some badass fucking action sequences in that show. Also, Nick Frost off Simon Pegg and Nick Frost fame. So yes, check it out. Cool. All right, bye guys. Yeah.
I always forget that's not